Hi, I'm Callie and welcome to Kapowski Reads. I'm getting over a stinker of a cold right now, so I am taking it a little bit easier, and I wanted to talk about a series that I have recently finished because I don't usually finish series. I try, I aim. Nobody goes into a series aiming to read one book. I go in hoping to read all of them, and very rarely does that happen, or at least very rarely does that happen in a short amount of time. But I started a new series at the end of February and I have now finished it. I finished it all in like a month. I am shocked, to be honest. I am surprised. So I thought, what better way to celebrate me actually paying some sort of attention to my own sequel reading goals than to talk about the sequel that I loved so much that I refused to wait any longer to finish it. And that series was the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I have this gorgeous hardback selection. My boyfriend got me them a while ago when I fell in love with Once Upon a Broken Heart, because of course I read the spin-off series before reading the original source material. That just made sense. I'm going to chat about each book individually and then do a sort of overall of what I loved about the series as a whole. And I hope that will work. I have my coffee, I have my books, let's get on with it. In my February wrap-up, I chatted about my favourite books of February. And one of those books was Caraval. I gave it 5 shiny stars. And I was reading this as a buddy read. And the group I was reading it with, we all agreed that we did not want to wait too long before going in to read book 2. So we read book 2. And then straight after that, the next week, we read book 3. So as a group, we all enjoyed it, and I do feel like perhaps my buddy reading the series could have resulted in me giving this book maybe an inflated rating, but I don't care if it did because I really enjoyed my entire experience, and is that not what books are all about? This is a young adult series which surrounds sisters Scarlett and Donatella, who goes by the name of Tella. This series kicked off with Caraval, and Caraval is the name of a festival, which is a celebratory game which is played annually. And there is this sort of ringmaster who is called Legend, and nobody knows who Legend is. And that's the sort of magic of this. The festival of Caraval features the same cast. They all just take on different roles every year. And this year, Scarlett has been invited. She has been trying for years and years to get to go to Caraval. And this is the year that she gets to. And she is scared. She is terrified to go. She doesn't think she's going to be allowed to go. And her sister is like, oh, we're going. And they go off to Caraval after getting passage from a very hunky sailor called Julian, who helps them get there. He helps them escape their father. And once they arrive at Caraval, Tella's missing. Tella has gone. Scarlett doesn't know where she is. And it turns out that this year, the goal of Caraval is to find Donatella. And Scarlett is a fiercely protective older sister. And she's terrified because Caraval is first and foremost a game, and nothing that happens in Caraval is truly real. But there's that little part of her brain that goes, but what if it is? What if my sister really is in trouble? And so she goes into like fierce protective mode and is trying to find her sister and like save her, because Scarlett has grown up in this world where there is danger, and her one role in life, she feels, is to protect her sister from danger. So Scarlett works together with hunky Julian. She doesn't want to. She doesn't know if she can trust him. Another chap pops up too. His name is Dante, and she doesn't know if she can trust him either, but he is also dreamy. So we enjoyed this. And I just loved how this book really focused on that beautiful sibling relationship. I felt it quite difficult to read at times because this year is the 10-year anniversary of my sister's death. So for me, I find this quite difficult to read, like quite upsetting to read, but like in a beautiful way. It was a lovely relationship, and I just felt a little upset by it because it was lovely and it's something that I don't have anymore. I have beautiful memories, but no new ones will be made. So for me, I found this to just be, oh, it hit me, it like punched me in the heart. It was beautiful. I really, really enjoyed their relationship. There was actually a part in this book that made me cry with like beautiful memories, because no spoilers for this book. I should have said at the beginning, I'm not going to spoil the series because I loved it and I want everybody to be able to enjoy it. But I am going to possibly spoil an episode of Buffy. So if you are not up to date on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, then skip ahead a little bit because I'm going to spoil something that happened in that. So in this book, there was a little section that reminded me of a conversation I had with my sister. Basically, we were watching Buffy and it was The Gift, the episode where Dawn, her blood can open the Hellmouth. So she is being kind of tortured to open the Hellmouth and let all of the evil out. And Buffy, protective older sister, was like, we have the same blood. We have the same blood. I'm going to save you. She jumps into the Hellmouth, opens it. It's horrible. Oh, the tears. And I was watching that with my sister, sobbing at the beautiful moment that I had just witnessed. And she turned to me and went, I would do that for you. And that was, first of all, a ridiculous thing to say, because I don't think I am the key to open a Hellmouth. But if I am, we're all a little bit screwed. But secondly, it was just beautiful comedic timing. And I felt like this book sort of had an element of that, like, where it just reminded me of that moment. And I just thought, oh, I love this book. And I love that this book reminded me of a conversation that I had kind of forgotten about. And I know that that sounds a bit ridiculous because there's no Hellmouth in this book that we're talking about. It just reminded me of an episode of Buffy that reminded me of a beautiful moment. And then I cried salty, salty tears. So I thought this book was beautiful, and I loved that Scarlet was so hyper focused on finding her sister. But I loved the way that these hunky gentlemen helped to sort of bring her out of her shell, to make her sort of take a moment for herself, because that's something that she never did. And I really liked the way that you could see her growing through this book. I really loved the way that the world of Caraval was absolutely spectacular. I loved the world building in this book, which was the reason I wanted to go ahead and read this series. And Caraval was taking place on an island, and the entire island had just been turned into this amazing world that was actually a livable world. There were shops, there were houses, there were businesses. And in addition to that, there was Caraval, the festival, the spectacle that was taking place as well. I loved the way that you couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't, because there was magic, there was whimsy, and there were glamours as well. Because there was a cast that were doing Caraval, they were actors. So it wasn't clear to the characters in the book or me as a reader who could be trusted, who was playing a role. And I really enjoyed that. I really loved not being able to be 100% sure who I could trust outwith of Scarlet, our protagonist in this tale. Next book was Legendary, and this book kicked off immediately after Caraval. None of that waiting around. And this book focused on Tella, the younger sister, which was really exciting because I didn't really get to know her in the first book. In the first book, I kind of thought she was a little bit impulsive. I loved being able to get to know her in this book. And this book, there is another Caraval, which is unusual because Caraval is an annual celebration. But Caraval is happening again so soon because of the Empress. The Empress is having a birthday and she loves Caraval and is like, I would like a Caraval for my birthday, please. So there's an extra one being brought on. But this one's a little bit different because this one's real. Whereas previously, it's all been like make believe. It's all, you know, no real repercussions happen. But this one, it's about to get real and it's about to get dangerous. This book introduced the Prince of Hearts, who is called Jax. And I love Jax. He is my favourite character in Once Upon a Broken Heart. I love him. I shouldn't. He's not a good guy. He is chaotic. Utterly chaotic. And I love that. I love when there's a chaotic, morally, is he morally grey? I don't think he's morally grey. I just think he's got no morals at all. He's got no conscience. And I love that in a character. I thought it was so fun to see him and Donatella, who so impulsive, but even she thinks that Jax goes a bit too far sometimes. So I really liked her maybe learning a bit more about herself through seeing Jax. So Jax is not only, of course he's hunky. I think it goes without saying, when new characters are introduced, they're hunky because sure. He is chaotic. He is arrogant. He is also a fate. And this book introduced the fates. They are magical beings. They are chaotic. Some of them are, you know, chaotic, but like in a good way. And some of them are chaotic in a they will hurt you just for fun way. And they had been missing for a really, really long time. And this book introduced some backstory, some sort of folklore about the fates, which I just ate up. I love when things like that are introduced to a series. I really enjoyed that this book allowed me to get to know Donatella a little bit more and to really see how different she was to her older sister. But it was that classic older and younger sister dynamic, which just I really enjoyed. The world was different in this one because it all took place at the Empress's palace. And I really enjoyed being taken away to this just amazing royal palace and the grounds. And of course, everything was magical and whimsical and just gorgeous. But I really liked having a castle, secret passageways, underground tunnels. Loved it. I found myself just utterly falling in love with the characters of Donatella and Scarlet. Previously, I had liked them, but this book, I loved them. I grew to love them so much and I wanted only nice things to happen to them, especially after what they'd been through in that first book. I wanted them to get a break. I wanted them to have a nice time, maybe a picnic, you know, good things. This book really, really did amp up that is it real, is it not element that had been in the previous book, because there was that risk of it was real. It was real in this book. But at times, was it? I loved not knowing if I could trust what I was reading. This was, again, super fast-paced, super full of twists and turns, and I didn't know where the book was going to go. So I just had to sort of buckle myself in and enjoy the ride. I loved getting to see the sisters just grow even closer to each other, but also grow in themselves to be able to get a little taste of independence, of freedom, which they had never had before. And I really enjoyed them getting to actually be able to live their lives. I thought that was just so beautiful to read and I just really enjoyed it. I love these characters. So naturally, after finishing this book, we started finale. And the last day to read finale is today, but I finished it yesterday because I wanted to. So good. I would have finished it earlier if I wasn't feeling so unwell and tired and had more of a sort of brain space for reading this book because, it was truly a wonderful finale. I did feel like this book started a little slower to the previous two books though, because it didn't start immediately afterwards. It started a couple of months later when everybody was a little bit settled from the outcome of the last book, which had me gasping. So I really enjoyed that there had been time to settle down. And this book was a little different because there was no Caraval taking place because it's annual. And, you know, without the book having to take place a year later, that just wouldn't have worked. So instead, this book was about the fates. Fates are back. That's not a good thing. There's a couple of fates that are probably okay, but on the grand scheme of things, this was bad news. So Scarlet and Tella had to be involved in trying to save everybody from the Fates, to save the Fates from getting their full power back, which was what they wanted, and terrible things were going to happen if that happened. I loved that we got to stay in the same location as before, because I had grown to love that palace, I had grown to love all of those buildings surrounding it, and I really enjoyed getting to know the world a little bit better, and to also have some callbacks to previous locations from the last book. I thought that this book was so exciting because it was so different to the previous two, because I didn't know where it was going, and it felt like more of a quest, and I am a sucker for a quest. The final chapters of this book, perhaps the last 50 pages, I had to read through my tears because I was sobbing hysterically, and at one point wailed, that is the only word that could really be used, at my partner. I can't see through my feelings, because I couldn't. I was just sobbing so much. I was so emotional at the end of this book. I loved it so much. And I had that element of fear of, this is the last book in a series. Anything could happen. I don't know if these characters, I don't know what happens to these characters. And I didn't really think about that until I was close to the end, where I thought, something bad could happen to somebody I care about, and I didn't want that to happen. And I was an emotional wreck, an actual wreck, reading this book. It was amazing. This book introduced something new, which enhanced my feelings of not knowing what to trust, because in addition to there being magic, there being glamour, there were dream sequences, which even the people involved in the dream sequences weren't 100% sure that they were in a dream sequence. So there was lots of like twisty turny, is it real, is it not? And just doubts upon doubts. I loved not being able to trust for certain what was happening. It would then be revealed what was actually happening, but there were those chapters where I was just left just almost confused, but in a good way. So I absolutely loved book 3. And to summarize the entire series, I would have to say that I thought the most powerful part of this book was the characters, the ability to have the characters be so well-rounded, even, you know, secondary side characters. I felt like I could feel that they were real. I know this book's not real, but the characters felt it, and I just really felt like none of the characters were, you know, one-dimensional. They were just rounded. I really felt like there could be times where if a character wasn't mentioned in the book, they were off doing something else. I really felt like they could have their own little lives outside of this story. I also felt like very strong feelings towards all of the characters, be that positively or I hate you. There were some characters I hated, really hated. But I felt like that was so powerful, because I don't know if I would have loved this book half as much if I didn't absolutely love the characters, and I really did. I also feel like the world building was just spectacular. I love an amazing immersive world, and I want to like jump into this world. I'll be a side character. I don't need to be important. I'm double the age of the main characters in this book, so I don't think I'd be a main character. I loved the world. I loved the whimsy. I loved the just descriptions of everything, made it just sound so magical and beautiful, and I just loved the world. There was romance in this book. It was a young adult book, so the romance did not go too far for a young adult book. It was not much more than kissing, but the tension. There was so much tension. There were gazes, there were hand brushing. It was very, just a lot of tension. I really enjoyed it. And I found myself rooting for like all of the romances, whether they were gonna end well or not. I just was invested. I feel like this series needs to be a film or like a Netflix. What are you up to? Make a series. This just read like it was made to be adapted. The descriptions of the world, of the characters, the costumes. I need to see these costumes in real life, not CGI. They'll probably have to be CGI though, but they just sound just so amazing. And the butterfly dress that Donatella wears, the magical dress that Scarlet wears that changes according to how she's feeling, but that dress has got its own feelings, and that dress really loves Julian, and it shows it. And I just thought, I love a shape-shifting dress. I just thought it sounded amazing, and I could really see it in my head, and I thought this was made to be on a big screen, and I want that. Could that happen? Is there a way that could happen? Maybe it is happening. I don't really pay attention to what films and TV series are being made, so maybe it is happening, and that would be great, and I would love that. And if it's not happening, I'm gonna be really sad. And I don't know, do I make a petition? How does that work? I absolutely love this series. Absolutely adored it. I gave every book 5 stars, and I don't know, like I said at the beginning, perhaps my rating system was a little bit more generous because of the fun buddy reading experience, but I don't think I was overly generous. I just think I found a series, I fell in love, I had an amazing time, and I rated it accordingly because I love this series and I already want to go and reread it, but I only finished finale yesterday. And I've not rehydrated myself enough to cry again. If you have read this series, please let me know how you got on with it. Unless you hated it, and then just lie to me because I loved it so much. I have not made any progress on my series goals really, because this was a new one. So I had to add one, and then I finished it. So then I get to take one away, which hasn't affected my overall total because it's not the first series I've started this year. So I really do want to focus a bit more on reading more series, and hope I find that the other series I finish are just as amazingly beautiful and as immersive a world as this series was. If you've read any series that you recommend, I would love to know, because clearly I can't be stopped when it comes to adding new series onto my list. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!